Good morning. Are you ready? Well, happy belated Valentine's Day, everybody. I did hear about the two parties that we had this weekend. I heard the singles got a little crazy. And I'm beginning to wonder, do I need to show up at this thing and keep these people on? No. Oh, man. Heard there was a few incidents there. Come on. Once again, the marrieds, that was awesome. Now, here's the thing. I don't understand this. Ray and LaWanda won our contest, our game, about knowing your spouse the best, and they've only been married half a year. Barb and I have been married 35 years. Now, I'm not saying they cheated, but anyways. I want to say thanks to the Hallmars for all that they did for helping us out. Tim is an interesting guy. We pray a lot for him. Thank you to the Montanos for the singles, getting that together. And then there's a whole slew of people. Frankie and Maritza. They trying to figure that thing out. Of course, Candace and Johnny, all these other people. It was awesome. You know, the Bible has a lot of great things to say about love. It's chock full of it. Okay, two greatest commands. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. 1 John 4, verse 16, you don't have to turn there. Simply says God is love. That he is the embodiment of love. And then 1 John 3:16, not John 3:16, 1 John 3:16 says this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. You know, in a world that's consumed with trying to figure out love, it's amazing. All the movies that we have and all the songs on love, why is it so hard to figure out? Well, I think we're just pretty selfish people, for one thing. But there's some great movies. Titanic, wasn't that a great movie? No? Okay. Pretty Lady? The Notebook. Okay, The Notebook. Love Story? Ghost? Oh, she likes that one. All right. Pride and Prejudice? Okay. Casablanca? All right. Now, I Googled it, and they said there's 1,187 songs with the word love in it. That cannot be accurate. There's got to be way more than that. Way more than that. Well, there's a song that I like. Yeah, I'm not going to sing it. I want people to stay. Okay. It's by Huey Lewis and the News. It's called The Power of Love. The power of love is a curious thing. Make a one man weep. Make another man sing. Change a hawk to a little white dove. More than a feeling, that's the power of love. Tougher than diamonds. Rich like cream. Stronger and harder than a bad girl's dream. Yeah. Make a bad one good, make a wrong one right. Power of love that keeps you home at night. You don't need money. Don't take fame. Don't need no credit card to ride this train. It's strong and it's sudden and it's cruel sometimes, but it might just save your life. That's the power of love. First time you feel it, it might make you sad. Next time you feel it, it might make you mad. But you'll be glad, baby, when you found that's the power makes the world go round. Pretty awesome. So today we have a treat. We're going to have 3 guest speakers today. Yes. And the title of the lesson is A Life of Love. And what we're going to do is look at Jesus and as an example of love. And we're going to have Victor come up and begin. Come on, Victor.
Good morning, guys. What's up here, Shane? I want to break this microphone like Barb. Well, today we're going to talk about love like what Jay shared. And my title for the lesson is His Love is Willing. I go to Luke chapter 19, verse 41. A lot of times when things are going wrong in our life, we can feel like God is absent. Like, where are you when I need you? You know, that type of deal. And we're going to see a passage here where it shows the magnitude of God's love for us. Luke 19, verse 41. It says, as he traveled to Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, if you, even you, had only known on this day what will bring you peace, but now is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you around him. You in every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the time of God coming to you. You know, you look at this passage, and it's a very heartfelt, but also very dark moment for the city, and also for Jesus. Now, it says that he wept over the city, but many commentaries tells us that he literally burst into a sobbing. Like, you know, when you cry and there's like boogers and you're like literally letting you go. He did not hold back when it came to the suffering of his people. He literally felt the pain of the city. The pain that they were going through, but the one that was coming for them. And also, a lot of commentaries talk about that he had a cry of frustration. Have you been there when you cry out of frustration? When you feel like there's no hope, there's nothing you could do, I'm done, I don't know what else to do but to cry. That's how he felt. Now, he visited the city many times, and he wanted to deliver the city from the suffering, the pain that was coming, from destruction. David Gusick, in one of his commentaries, talks about how there is some copies of this passage that some people believe, hey, we should take this out. This part where he says he wept. In their mind, they thought, he's a perfect God. He shouldn't be crying. I was like, that is pretty messed up. They would even think of taking that out. And I realized he cried because he was perfect. Because he knew the pain that was coming to the city. He's not an absent God who doesn't feel what we feel. But yet the spiritual blindness of the leaders and the people stopped him from delivering the city. You know, Milwaukee is no different. There's a spiritual blindness when it comes to the word of God. Not just from the people, but their leaders. And there's nothing worse to see that the spiritual leaders are preaching what the people want to hear. And they don't deal with the pain and the suffering of the congregation. There's divorce, there's adultery, there's kids without parents, and they're okay with the congregation to be where they are. They're okay with the suffering and not engaging. And they said to themselves, I'm only one man, what can I do? Well, Jesus was one man and he changed the world. Yeah. The city is spiritually blind. Now, we know it's blind because we came out of there. And at one point we were blind spiritually. We were oblivious to the spirituality of the Bible and God. And Jesus longs to open the eyes of Milwaukee. The question is, are your eyes open? Do you see what Jesus sees? Do you feel the pain and suffering of the city? Go to Matthew 23. We're going to read the same passage, but in a different, it adds more to the heart of Jesus. Matthew 23, verse 37. Bible reads, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather you like children together, as a hen gathers its chicks under their wings. But you were not willing. Look, your house is left to desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Same passage. Adds a lot more to the heart of God, heart of Jesus. You know, here in verse 37, we have the picture of a hen with its chicks. Now, I grew up on a farm, and it was great to see every time every time there was a storm coming, the hen will gather all the chicks. Hey, come over. All right, and they all run under the mom. And obviously, chickens are not that big, but when they're protecting the little ones, they look big and puffy, right? And oftentimes you see the mom, running to a secure place, and then you see like the 1, 2, 3, or 4, maybe 10, and then you see the one struggling, stumbling on the rocks and trying to catch up, and they finally go under the wings of the mom, and then the same one that is struggling to catch up is the one peeking to see what's going on outside. And then you see the hand just taps him inside, and then picks again. But see, they do this to protect the little ones. They are protective. In Mexico or anywhere in the farms, they protect them against predators. Rats. Rats will come in and take the chicks and eat them. Eagles, okay, hawks, dogs, humans. Okay, and I grew up on the farm, and I used to ride horses and pigs and sheep and anything that I had 4 legs. I tried to ride it. And one time I'm trying to grab one of the chicks, and Mama was like maybe at a distance, and I grabbed it because he was so cute, and I grabbed it, and as soon as I grabbed it, I felt like an intensity like just coming at me, and I got the beating of my life. Really just jump on top of me and start hitting me. I was like, oh my gosh. And I dropped the chin and started running. I was like, never again. That's the protective spirit of the mom. But it's interesting that Jesus uses the same analogy. He says, how I long to gather you like a hen gathers his chicks. Come on. I want to protect you. I want to rescue you from people that want to hurt you. It's a protective spirit. And in the Old Testament, the Greek for chicken is pretty much means bird. And oftentimes they use the word bird to represent the protective spirit of God for his people. You can read it in Psalm 17, verse 8, Psalm 91, verse 4, Isaiah 31, verse 5. And you see, Jesus wants to be our refuge, our safe house. He wants us to be happy. He wants us to grow. He wants to pour his love on us. But here's the sad part. Although he has incredible plans for our lives, a future, great hope, he wants to protect us. But in verse 37, it says, but you are not willing. Come on. God's love is always willing. It is us who are stubborn and prideful. And we don't go under his protection because we think we know better. I got my own way of protecting myself. A and B. Guys, like, you can lose your arm today. You only got one. Then I got my head and my legs, and then we get so prideful and arrogant, we think we can take on the world. And he just longs to gather us. Hebrews 12, verse 11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Come on. And a lot of times we talk about the person who's receiving the discipline. We talk about a focus on, hey, it's painful, you're receiving discipline. But let me tell you something. When discipline is delivered out of love, both parties suffer. The one doing the discipline and the one getting the discipline. When I was a kid, my dad used to give discipline to me, and I thought, and they would say, oh, it hurts me more than it hurts you. And I'm really? It does? Because you're not feeling it. And then I got married, had kids. When I discipline my boys, got 2 boys, and they're boys. They're like intense. And when it comes to for me to, be the dad, and I hate the feeling of putting them through discipline. And there's times where I'm about to discipline, and then I had to turn around and build courage because everything in me wants to take care of them. But I got to remind myself, me disciplining them is taking care of them. And I have to oftentimes tell them, this hurts me as well. And then they start crying, and they're like, and it breaks your heart.
Come on.
And how much you want to just hug them and say, everything's fine, and let's just not talk about the discipline, and just hug them and cry with them. But I will be a very bad parent, a very bad father if I just let them be. And when the scripture says that Jesus wept, let me put things in perspective, why he really cried. Josephus writes about this situation with Jerusalem. Jesus says, hey, they will destroy you. You don't know what's coming, but it's coming. I tried to rescue you. And Josephus writes about the embankment. Basically, they built around Jerusalem, the Roman Empire. They probably dug a big hole around the city. Then people couldn't get out. They had to stay in the city. And they just surrounded them with troops. And after, for some time, people are not allowed to leave the city, so that means they can't get food, they can't get water, they can't get anything. Then the famine kicks in and devours people. Josephus writes how the lanes of the city were covered with dead bodies. At first, they would bury them. But then they the bodies were so many that they didn't know what to do with them, so they just let them be on the ground. And they were throwing people off the walls to make space for the other ones. But at one point, they just realized that, this is never ending. Moms would drop their kids from the wall to end their suffering. Josephus also writes, it says that the people were like shadows, just walking around, hitting walls, and they were like zombies. And literally, wherever it was their end of the rope, they would just drop it, and people would just look at them and just, it's gone. The smell was horrific. Dead bodies everywhere. A famous preacher in the 1800s, Spurgeon, writes, and he says, there is nothing in history to exceed this horror. That means the pain was so much, and it was a horrible, like watching a horror story or a horror movie, and there's nothing you can do. Can you imagine Jesus' heart, knowing that you didn't listen? I tried to warn you. I long for you to rescue you from this. There's nothing worse for a parent to see your kids walking the path of destruction. And there's nothing you can do to stop them. You pleaded with them long nights. You try to persuade them to listen to you. But at the end, all you can do is cry for them. For what there's to come. There's nothing you can do to stop them, with the hopes that they just realize that they were wrong. And that was Jesus' heart. This is why he cried. That's how he feels today. He looks down on earth and sees the pain of Milwaukee, the pain of not just one city, but the whole world. There was an Amber Alert for a kid yesterday. And immediately, as soon as I got the alarm, I started praying. Because I know that I'm a dad. And there's one time we lost Isaac in Walmart. And my heart almost shattered. And it was for 2 minutes. And I try to hold it and not to cry and not to panic. And you're walking around Walmart and you figure it out. He decided it was fun to go around and hide. And you see him coming, you're like, oh my. But everything in you just want but we hug them, and and then obviously there was a discipline afterwards, but then it's almost like your soul comes back to your body. Imagine all magnified to the whole world, and Jesus is looking down, and people are not listening yet. They're still spiritually blind. See, God's love is always willing. He was willing to protect. He's willing to cry for you, for me, to fight for you. How willing is he? He's willing to die on the cross with the hopes that you will listen and open your eyes. But yet, we are not willing. Why is this church not filled? Why are many churches closing? Why are people not opening their eyes? Because they're simply unwilling. And it's your job, my job, to help them open their eyes through the scriptures and love them the way Jesus loved them. Thank you so much.
That was awesome, Victor. Great job. The title of my lesson is Love of a Shepherd. Go to John chapter 10. I want to share about the Singles in Campus Valentine's party real quick. There was an interesting thing that happened, okay? When grown people play musical chairs, it never ends well. And but on Friday, there was a situation where there was two people left. And one of them was Tyler. He's trying not to look at me right now. Tyler was left, and then a sister, Alexis. Alexis here? I don't know who she is. Okay, and they're going around, and Frankie goes up to Tyler. He says, all right, dude, you got a choice. You can either beat this girl on Valentine's Day, or you can just forfeit and lose. So he starts going around in a circle, and the music comes off, and Tyler's like, he's like, oh, what happened? It's like, oh, okay, I see you, Tyler. That's the king right there. And then the next time, there was another round. I'm not gonna mention any names, but same thing, brother and sister, last people, and the brother picks up the chair and sits on it at the end, and like looks with a mean face. I'm not gonna mention Keon's name though. John chapter 10. Verse 1, it says, I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way is a thief and a robber. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but they did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore, Jesus said again, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come out and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me. I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not in this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. Okay, so Jesus makes this parable. He says, I am the good shepherd. I am the gate. And these are both things, it's very protective things. The gate is meant to protect the sheep and keep away things that are evil and things that are coming to attack. The shepherd is all about protecting the flock, raising the flock, loving the flock. And the sheep are us. Okay? Sheep are not the smartest animal, I'm sure you guys heard. Sheep get sick very easily, super easy, and very often, unless you're careful. But if you have a good shepherd, you needn't worry about your sheep, because you can trust that he will take care of them, and it says Jesus will lay down his life for the sheep. That's a pretty awesome metaphor. And Jesus is a unique kind of shepherd, because shepherds, they raise sheep, right, for for the wool, but also for the meat. Okay? Jesus is saying, verse 10, I've come to give them life to the full. Jesus is a unique shepherd because he's not planning on killing the sheep for the meat. I mean, I don't know if you guys have had lamb. Oh, it's the best meat ever. It's amazing. Okay, falls off the bone. It's beautiful. But Jesus, he says he's here to have the sheep live a full life. He's not like any other shepherd that just raises it to sell it and kill it. Jesus raises it and brings them out to find pasture. And pasture is symbolism for peace and life. Jesus wants to protect us. And that's how it works. And a lot of times, humans as sheep, we get sick very easy in life. And we get sick in many ways, whether it's fear, through drugs, through disasters, through family situations, jealousy, anger. It can be very easy to get your heart sick. And Jesus, he comes in and he wants to protect, keep away the wolves, where the other guy doesn't really want to keep them away. It says the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. You know, and I think of a protector, and I think of Captain America. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, but there's a scene where there's a commanding officer and a scientist, and they're trying to figure out who gets the serum to become Captain America, to become strong really fast. And there are these two guys. One guy's very strong. He's working out. He's doing these push-ups and these jumping jacks. And then you got Steve Rogers, who's very skinny. He's like a twig. Like a twig. And the commanding officer is like, why are you going to choose this guy? Look at this guy. He's awesome. Look how strong he is. That's a soldier. He's loyal. He obeys orders. And the scientist is like, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for the heart. I'm looking for the heart. So the commanding officer is not convinced. So he goes over and he grabs a fake grenade. Grabs a fake grenade, like thinking he's going to show who's the real soldier. And he throws it into the crowd. And everybody scatters. Everybody runs, even the strong guy, except for Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers jumps on the grenade. He not only jumps on the grenade, he's like, move, get out the way. And he's trying his best to protect everyone. He doesn't even know the grenade's fake. It's the funniest thing. But it shows his heart that he's willing to risk his life to protect the other soldiers. And the question is for you guys, are you guys protectors? Is that how someone will define you? Wow, this person really protects me. You know, I can't stand when the sisters walk home late at night by themselves. I cannot stand it. It makes me so angry because I'm like, you hear all the news and everything bad that's going on. And in UWM town, there's a lot of like, you know, date rapes, stuff like that. People get kidnapped all the time. And this is a reality that I live in. And so it really hurts me when somebody, like I would not be able to live with myself if something like that happened and I didn't walk the sister home. Come on. And I think of you guys, are you guys protecting each other? You know, Satan, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And to a lot of us, he maybe has stolen your joy. Maybe he has killed your ambition. Maybe he has destroyed your life with drugs and sexual desires. Maybe he's destroyed it in some kind of way. Are you protecting each other from Satan? And, you know, because if you come to church looking, who can I protect? How can I help somebody? Or you come to church just to have fun and for you. And also how you live your daily life. You look for people to protect, or do you look, how can I succeed? How can I help me? You know, what's awesome about Jesus is he put his life down. Steve Rogers put his life down to help other people. There's this guy I studied the Bible with this semester, and he confessed to me that he's been struggling with drugs since he was a young teen, and that he overdosed twice. He died twice before the age of 20. Okay, and if I had not have gone out and looked for this guy, I don't think he would have ever talked about this with anybody. And because he's just so introverted. Nobody's just looking to protect this guy. And that really hurt me. And it's come to the point where even he totally doesn't understand that he's sick. He's in this spot. Doesn't understand it. And so I'm trying to help him, trying to inspire him. And a lot of times it's the same thing with us, is you cannot, sometimes when you're sick, you don't even know it. I mean, sheep, they don't know when they're sick. They don't know, and by golly, they don't know how to cure themselves, so that's for sure. They have no idea. And that's the same thing with us. I remember when I was in high school, I was a senior. I didn't know I struggled with depression. I just went to parties, had fun, played video games, did school. And then after I became a Christian, I looked back in my senior year, I was like, oh my gosh, I was totally depressed. I had no idea until I came out of it. Go to Luke chapter 15.
Come on, Johnny.
Marvell is an awesome protector. I remember one time we were driving together, and Malik, his brother, got pulled over in front of us. Sorry, Malik.
Come on, Malik.
And I'm like concerned. I'm like, Marvell, they're gonna think we're up to no good. Why? Because Marvell wanted to stop and make sure he was okay. And Marvell's like, no, that's my brother. I gotta make sure he's okay. I'm like, all right. So I'm like, I voiced my concern one more time. We're like, okay, are you sure, Marvell? He's like, no, that's my brother. We're gonna make sure he's okay. So I was like, amen. But you could just see his spirit. He wasn't, even I couldn't convince him to leave his brother and let the cop deal with him. But you never know what could happen, honestly. But Marvell's spirit to want to protect his brother is very inspirational. Luke 15, verse 1, now the tax collectors and the sinners were gathering around to hear him, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? When he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and he goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost sheep. I tell you that. Okay, so Jesus, there's 100 sheep, one gets lost. And Jesus is risking it all. He said this is basically what Jesus would do. He'd risk the 99, leave them behind, risk it all just to get the one stray. And the question I have for you is, are you in Jesus's flock? Is Jesus your shepherd? Do you let him call the shots?
Come on.
Or do you wander off because you got a better way? Or you saw something, you're curious about it?
Come on.
Well, that's exactly when the wolf is going to come. And that's exactly how the sickness comes. I love Christian music, but I'm totally not, I'm not that into it, okay? And because sometimes I feel like Christian music can be very religious, kind of weird sometimes. I don't totally connect with it. If you guys do, that's you, but not me, okay? So what I like to do is I like to listen to vague romantic music.
Come on.
Very vague, where it doesn't say, what's up, baby girl? What's up, honey? It doesn't say stuff like that. It doesn't say stuff like that, but it's very vague. And I use those songs, and I'm like, wow, this is like somebody, wow, this is how God looks at me. Or, wow, this is how I should look at God. Okay, one of those songs is from The Greatest Showman. It's a song called Never Enough. I'll read the quote. Amber Alert, that sucks. Towers of gold are still too little. These hands could hold the world, but it would never be enough. And that's the idea, is God has everything. But even towers of gold and the world, but it's not enough for God. God desires to leave the 99 and grab you.
Come on.
So my challenge to you guys is become a protector. Imitate the heart of Jesus and make sure you stay in Jesus' flock. Amen.
Did these guys do awesome? All right, go to Matthew chapter 5. And my title is An Unconditional Love. Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 43. In the world today, you just don't find unconditional love. You grow up, and what happens is that people kind of stomp on your heart a little bit. And the natural tendency is to put our walls up. And as we get more and more abuses, we have a conditional love. In other words, I'll love you if you perform a certain way. And if somebody does something to hurt you, tendencies, okay, you've got to, jump through hoops here before I'm going to let you back in. Can you guys relate with what I'm saying? Look at what Jesus has to say. Matthew chapter 5, verse 43. You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your brothers, what are you doing more than others? Do not even the pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. We put conditions on our love, but you don't see that in Jesus' heart. You just don't see that. He says, you've heard that was said, hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute. Why? So that you can be sons of your Father. In other words, he's saying, listen, this is what Christianity is. There should be a difference between us and the rest of the world, and the issue is love. That we don't treat people like the rest of the world treats each other. And he gives us a little example here. It says he causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good. And he sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. What is he saying is, I don't show favoritism. God says, listen, everybody gets the benefits. Why? Because they're his children, and he loves all of us. I remember when the girls were little. They always love it when I share about them. A discussion came up at the dinner table about who was mom and dad's favorite. Yeah. And I can remember them bantering back and forth. And, well, you're dad's favorite because blah, blah, blah. And then it'd be, are you kidding me? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and they just keep going back and forth. And see, there's a tendency to think, okay, this is what happens. There's a favoritism. For Barb and I, hey, we didn't show favoritism because they're all three special in their own way. And a parent feels that way towards their kids. And this is how God is towards all of his children. That there is not a favoritism. Now, for me, I can do that in the family, but what about the people out there? All right, the people that treat you poorly. And it's normally not my heart to really have an unconditional love when people treat you like crap, okay? And there's that temptation, when people do stuff to you, that, you get angry and the alien can come out and all sorts of crazy things. I remember one time I was in Chicago and I came up to a light and it turned from red to green. And there was a guy walking across the street right in front of my car going like this, And it's just like, why? Why do people do that? And it pulls stuff out of your heart. But see, I can't dictate how I'm going to respond to people by what they do to me. It's just not right. Now, in a city like Milwaukee, we got a big problem. We got a huge problem with racism. That's just the way it is. And the question is, do you show favoritism? Do I show favoritism? Do you treat black people a certain way? Do you treat white people a certain way? Hispanics, people who are more wealthy than you, or people who are homeless. Do you show favoritism? This last week, we went to a funeral, and Marfel's cousin had been shot to death. And it's heartbreaking to go into these things to see the pain and the suffering. And that there's a lot of heartache in Milwaukee. I asked Barb, I said, how many funerals do you think we've been to in the last half year? She said, I think 10. And I was thinking, oh, wow, 6, 8, but maybe you're right. And what that shows is, hey, there's the pain doesn't show favoritism. It's everywhere. And we have a choice to change that. To say, hey, I'm going to go into your world because I feel what you feel, or I want to feel what you feel. And I want to inspire you out of that. You know, in verse 46, it says, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Aren't even the tax collectors doing that? Aren't even the pagans doing that? And he's saying, listen, you got to be different. So you love the church, so what? How about those people out there? He says, hey, pagans, tax collectors. People hated tax collectors. And he says, listen, you got to be more than this. If you're going to walk with me, if you're going to claim to be a Christian, you got to be different. And that's the mark of a true disciple. It comes down to not how we treat each other here, but what do we do out there, especially when we're alone? Not when you're walking with another disciple. What do you do? That's where the rubber meets the road. That is the condition of your love. How great will you love people? How do you respond to those who could care less about you? Or worse yet, how about the close friend that abandons you? The close friend that you found out lied about you? The close friend that stole something from you or said something about you? Well, Jesus has an example of this. Look at Matthew chapter 26. Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 14. Matthew 26:14. It says, then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, what are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you? So they counted out for him 30 silver coins. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. Wow. Judas agrees to betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And it's alarming. It's like, wow, is that all? Is that all the value you see in Jesus? Jesus who trained you for over 3 years. Jesus gave you hope, trained you, taught you, gave you authority to drive out demons and perform miracles. Jesus even allowed Judas to be in charge of their funds. And it says that he would take from time to time. Jesus trusted him. Look at Jesus' response. Matthew 26, verse 47. It says, while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him. Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. And Jesus replied, friend, do what you came for. It really is amazing that Judas would betray Jesus with a kiss. Jesus talked about love all the time. And it's kind of like he's saying, here's your love in your face. And Jesus' response, friend, do what you came for. Jesus' love was not conditional on how Judas treated him. You know, Jesus didn't just teach this, he lived it. He was the example. Because love is not a feeling, it's a decision. Now, for the church, I want to address a few things. Number one, there cannot be any favoritism in this church. At this point, I haven't really seen anything, but listen, if we don't talk about it, it can creep its way in. Also, you can't really just pick and choose who you're going to share your faith with. Why? That's favoritism. If you're only reaching out to your kind, you're in sin. It's favoritism. Because you're making the decision for them. And you can't do that. You know, when Jesus picked his guys, the 12 apostles, they were radically different. He got a group of fishermen, and then he got a tax collector, the hated tax collector. And then he grabbed a zealot. I don't know if you know what a zealot is. At this time, there were 4 groups of Jews. You had those who followed the Pharisees, those who followed the Sadducees, those who followed the Essenes, and then you had the zealots. All right, now, the zealots were the troublemakers. They're the ones who wanted to attack Rome all the time. And a lot of these guys got killed off. This is a radical guy, and Jesus says, yeah, let's grab one of them. Let's put him right next to the tax collector and the fisherman. For us, we can't have any cliques in the church. Sin. Love is colorblind. Love isn't conditional on age. Amen? Love isn't sexist. You know, I appreciate the people who love up on Kathy and Selena, you know, and them loving back. They add so much to the church. And we need to appreciate that. I appreciate when you do that. I appreciate it when so many of you grab a hold of the kids in the church. Just love the kids. That says a lot to a parent. How you treat my kids says a lot to me. And it is amazing. These kids get passed around, and they just love the church because they have a ton of people who will do stuff with them. And it says a lot. It's family. I appreciate all the behind-the-scenes things that people do, and there are many. This is what makes this awesome. But we can't let sin creep in. We cannot show favoritism. You know, I think for me, one of the hardest things for me to do, to deal with, is when people don't respect me. When they treat me like I'm lower than them, a loser or something like that. I don't know if you struggle with that, but that's an issue. And I remember one time I got a new job. I was a new guy on the job. And I come walking in, and this guy just kept harassing me and giving me a hard time. And, you know, like the alien, you know, I want to do that. But what I had to do is think, why is he doing this? And I had to think, all right, let me put myself in his position. I'm the new guy. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know what I bring to the table. And he could try to force, what he was trying to do is force me to respect him. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to respect the guy across the board. And the walls dropped like a rock. And he became a good friend of mine, and he became a disciple. But if I treated him harshly right back, he'd have never responded, because that's not love. Love says, I don't care what you do to me. I'm still going to love you. Now, also, if there is any favoritism going on in the group, I want to know about it. Talk to me. And if you feel any favoritism from me, I want you to confront me, because it begins here. Does that make sense? We're all on ground level. I don't want to be blind in any way to any of this. I'm going to close with a challenge. I want you to share your faith this week with someone you normally wouldn't share your faith with, for one thing. And then I want you to get with another member in the church that you've never gotten with, or that maybe you have, but rarely. Why? So that we can continue to get to know each other, but break the bonds that Satan, you know what I'm saying, right? Okay. Let's do this. Let's continue to love each other in spite of each other. When we fail, we mess up, love us. Please. We need all the loving we can get. And so does Milwaukee. And so let's change Milwaukee with our love. Amen?